Welcome back here today on the beautiful campus of Florida Panhandle Technical College. Another in our series of what's going on in the community. Today our guest is no stranger to the show. If you're a regular viewer, you recognize Jeff Massey, County Administrator for Washington County, Florida. When we come back, we're going to talk about a bunch of things about Washington County, not the least of which is the upcoming census. It's very important. We're going to talk about the importance of being a part of that census process. We're going to talk a little bit about how COVID-19 has impacted the county and a bunch of other stuff. Hopefully you get a lot from these shows. I know I come away from every show learning just a little bit more about Washington County, and hopefully today will be no different. We'll be right back. Welcome back. As mentioned, our guest today is Jeff Massey, County Administrator for Washington County. How are you?
Doing pretty good, I guess. Doing real good, actually.
You know, you are nonstop. You're sort of, that apex where the administration and county commission meets the public, and you take it from all sides, generally pretty much all the time. Interestingly, you are the administrator who has had longevity compared to what we've seen in the past. For what it's worth, from me personally and us as a business, certainly, we recognize and appreciate what you bring to the table.
Well, thank you for that.
The county has dramatically changed in the last 5 to 10 years, particularly in the last 5 years. And I think in no small part to the changes in county commission, to administration and so forth, things seem to be running very smoothly. And I say all that because probably never before has Washington County been challenged as much as we have in the last couple of years.
That's true.
Hurricane Michael would have ordinarily dealt a death blow to any small county our size, except the good news is that you guys had a lot of things in place. Steve Joyner, County Commissioner, District 5 in Washington County, was recently on the show talking about some of that. But before we go down that pathway, I want to talk a little bit about the importance of the census.
Okay.
We've got a lot of people in the community that have come on the show expressing that importance. From your perspective, as that guy who has to decide, in many cases, allocation of monies and can we do this project, can we afford that project, are we going to have to cut back on services because of lack of monies, you and the county commission. Let's talk a little bit about the importance of that census, and starting at the beginning, Jeff, how those monies are divided up according to population.
Well, and that's key to understand this, because I've just been receiving some of the first information I've been able to see concerning the CARES Act. Let's just use that for an example. The CARES Act was a result of COVID-19, and along with the CARES Act, each state gets distribution of federal dollars. I think Florida's $8.23 billion is allocated from the federal government to help cover expenses associated with what we've been through on COVID, okay? Well, how do we get our piece of that? So the information I've been seeing and that has been recommended, it's a proposal, is for counties that are eligible for this, is based on population. Well, there's your need for the census right there. Let me give you an example. At 25,000 plus a few for us in population versus, I'll use Wakulla County for instance. They're almost 33,000. But they would be eligible for about 400,000 more in funding than we are based on population, on what I'm looking at in this proposal. Okay, it may not, they may go a different direction, but I can tell you, population is a common sense way of how to distribute funds. And they look at this in many, and this is just one pot of money from CARES. Okay, there's different types of fundings always available. So how do you get that funding? One of the criteria they use is population. So it's very important for us to get as accurate as we can when it comes to our census count in this county. And I'll tell you for sure, just since I've been here, I know our population's increased because I have the opportunity to look at new dwelling permits and houses being built, and we have a lot of that going on all over the county. A lot of it's going on in South Washington County. So I'm really looking forward to getting our new numbers and seeing how we're going to plug into this mix as compared with the other smaller counties in the state. Because yes, I am prejudiced. It's Washington County. I'm going after the money. So-
Well, we want you, we from Washington County want you to be prejudiced for Washington County. Let's talk about general terms, the census. The census started in 1790, I believe. It happens every 10 years. It's
Yes.
the only opportunity for the federal government and by default the state government to find out exactly who is where in the United States. So some questions that they may ask you are your income level, and if you own your own home, and if you
Right.
own vehicles, and how many people in your family. The interesting thing is that they don't ask personal information outside of those broad numbers. So people, nobody wants to have somebody come knock on their door.
Oh,
and let me
I
point
get
out,
that.
yeah, let me point out before we go any further that you have several opportunities to respond to the census. You can reply via U.S. mail, and everybody by now has received one of those in the mail. Chances are yours went into the trash. Nobody wants to be bothered. But here's the deal. If you don't reply by mail, by phone, or online, they will be knocking on your door. Now, this whole thing comes to fruition about the middle of August, I believe. So depending on when you're viewing this show, August 2020, by the middle of August 2020, you'll have had somebody knock on your door if you have not replied in a more or less invasive way. So it's really easy to go online. My wife did it in 10 minutes and she had completed the whole form. By law, the government can't use any personal information to prosecute you for any crimes. And besides, there's no information there that would have
Right.
anything to
That's
do
right.
with that. So if you have a fear and nobody likes to have that intrusive environment in their life. We can't stress enough, though, the importance of that. You pointed out one very big one. Up until 12 weeks ago, maybe the beginning of the year, if nothing else, we never heard of a pandemic. We certainly didn't have one in our lifetime. Mm-hmm. We have experienced something which is truly unique within our lifetime, and it's caused a lot of additional expense, and along with additional expense goes the lack of revenue. We talked in the pre-show that you lost lots of sales tax and gasoline taxes because people were hunkered down. They had a stay-at-home order. They weren't spending money like they did before.
Yeah.
So it cost you money both ways, lack of revenue and additional expenses. You say the CARES Act is going to give a pot of money to Florida, but now within Florida and all of our 67 other county neighbors, you have to fight for your portion of it. Having that census number, being able to give an accurate number of the people that live in Washington County is going to determine if you're able to get those monies that you really need. And again, if our citizens don't reply, you're not going to have those numbers. Am I correct in that?
Yes, I want to point out one thing before I respond to that. Keep in mind, you're exactly correct in what you said about COVID and the expenses and what's done to our revenues. But keep in mind, we're still repairing roads and spending money trying to recover from Michael to get our county back the way it's supposed to. And it's an ongoing project. And by the way, I'm very excited the way that's moving. We have work plans in place and we're getting a lot done. So, and the other thing I want to point out is keep in mind this. Through Michael, through COVID, this board has not borrowed one dime. Not one. So that's got to say something, right? It's got to say that, you know what? They're being fiscally responsible with their money. We understand we can't spend money we don't have. And when we do have money, we want to try and apply it in the right places that make the most sense for the taxpayers. So that's what we do. To respond to your question on COVID, you're exactly right. I had some correspondence yesterday. See, we collect taxes, we send them to the state, okay? They reimburse us a lot of those taxes, okay? Up to 95% taxes come back to us. I got a letter yesterday saying for April, May, and probably June, don't expect but about 50% of that. Now, I've kept the clerk in the loop because, I've already started on budget. So it's identifying our expenses, how we're going to operate and all is the easy part. The hard part is, what are my revenues going to look like? Because I can have a great plan to operate the county, but if I can't pay for it, now I need a new plan. So there's a lot of things pending, and I'm not sure I'm going to have a good idea of what our revenues are going to settle out at until a little bit later in the year. But I don't like to wait to the last minute, get the budget ready, have the board enough time to look at it. We have to adopt all that in September before our new fiscal year. So it's challenging, but let me tell you what we've done. Because it was a federal disaster, state declared disaster, we had a local state of emergency, okay? That made certain expenses with COVID eligible for reimbursement, okay? So going through what we went through with Michael and dealing with FEMA, we understand this now. I want to tell you something I'm very proud about, and hats off to our EOC and even our PA contractor, Wheeler, who's been assisting us with all this information, is we were not only the first, the only county in the state of Florida to apply for expedited funds from FEMA, which were entitled to 50% up front to cover COVID costs, okay? And so now I understand.
Let me interrupt you just a second there. Tell me what you mean by expedited
well,
return.
FEMA says, okay, look, we understand you're taking all this expense on the chin for this declared disaster. So you can go ahead and apply for monies up front and receive 50% of that to help you get through until you can get fully funded, okay? So it just makes sense.
And you're saying Washington County was the only one that took advantage of that?
Well, I think there's other counties now, but they called us to figure out how to do it. Imagine that. People calling Washington County to figure out, well, what do we need to do this?
Good job.
So we had a special meeting this morning, and we all signed the documentation to send to FEMA for them to send us the money. And so I'm proud of that. And so we're doing things associated with COVID to cover our citizens and cover the county. The biggest thing we do not want to do is we don't want to borrow money. We want to pay our debt down, and we're going to use common sense to figure out our way out of these situations that come our way. I think we did it in Michael, and we're still doing it because we're going to be dealing with that a couple more years at least on our roads, and probably a lot longer than that on other issues. We're dealing with this COVID thing. We don't know where it's going. It looks like it's starting to, people are getting a little bit back to normal, but if it raises its head again, well, we're going to be ready. So
I say this time and again, Jeff. We are gleaning the benefits of having 5 guys sitting on that dais who are business people at heart, including yourself. You were in the private sector. You managed multi-million-dollar business for a number of years. Having people who are in business who realize you can't spend money that you don't have, that if you are going to want to borrow money, you better have a good credit rating, so you don't want to have a black mark on your record. So you guys had a 2-year, I believe, plan to be debt-free. Kind of got kicked in the shins a little bit because of Hurricane Michael.
You did.
But you still have a 5-year plan. You still have these long-term plans. COVID-19, I mean, Hurricane Michael, we had several weeks to prepare for that. We knew that a hurricane was coming. You know, we had a few days that we knew it was going to be bad. We had, a few hours to know it was going to be really bad. COVID-19 kind of just snuck up on us, and all of a sudden, we wake up and it's there. There are things you can plan for. There are some things that you cannot. Regardless, it sounds like you guys are playing the game. You guys are applying for the monies. You guys are doing the paperwork. You have systems in place. Just with Hurricane Michael and the FEMA reimbursements, you're talking lots of money there. You actually had companies in place who professionally do that kind of work even before the storm hit.
Yeah, it's essential. And I want to say this. When COVID snuck up on us, I can take absolutely no credit for anything because our board just jumped right on it and says, here's what we need to do, and I fell right in there with them and locked arms with them because we knew how serious it was. But really, the reason we're doing as well we are in COVID-19 is because of the leadership of the board. I'll just be honest with you. And so I'm very proud to be associated with the organization because of that.
Would you stick around for the second half? I'd
Sure.
like to explore some of this stuff a little more deeply.
Yeah, absolutely.
Our guest today is Jeff Massey, County Administrator for Washington County, Florida. Talking about, at this point, COVID-19, Hurricane Michael, expenditures, budgets, how to stay ahead of that curve on a business level when you run a business as big as the county is. We're not one of the bigger counties in Florida. As a matter of fact, we're one of the smaller counties, and we're a very large rural county on top of that. These guys are doing a pretty good job. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more in depth with Jeff Massey about how they're managing to do that. We'll be right back.